Hey again everybody, it's Robert184 from gundamreviews.net, and Gundam Age, the first generation, is rapidly coming to an end, and episode 11 is going to give us an episode light on action, but heavy on development and setting things up for the big finale. The opening credits are going to have the silhouette for the Sparrow, except it's actually not going to make any appearances, but what better way to kick off an episode with some Amuro-style reflections with Flit pining away in his room. Actually, he's flashing back to the battles that he's been having, and he flashes back to meeting Tifa in the first episode. And Emily, to give her credit, is actually not spying, but she's going to walk in and see the handkerchief that Flit got from the mysterious girl. And then for another Gundam classic, why not go to the MS hangar, show off all the mobile suits, and this is going to set up the exposition for the episode, as they're arriving at a neutral colony, which, seeming how the Federation is quite corrupt here, they may actually be able to pull off some allies, and they're specifically going to meet some old friends of Don Voyage, who Flit also flashed back to his death in the last episode. Millet shows up looking for Wolf, and she's going to find him in the gym working out like a madman, and she's going to hand him a towel, which isn't quite the actions of somebody who's not interested. And here we're actually going to see Wolf show a human side as they talk about their doubts about heading into the final battle, and they talk about death and what that's going to mean. And this time, it's actually not going to be Emily who's spying, but it's the old Genoa's pilot saying, "Oh, those two," and shaking his head. And as the crew leaves the Diva to head into the woods, I saw something I never thought I would see, and that's most of the action in this episode is going to take place on a pontoon boat. As they head into the woods to set up their plans, you've got Malaise getting close to Wolf, Flit getting ready to go have an encounter with Destiny, Racked hanging out, and yes, the Genoa's stuck playing driver, along with Grudek, the brains of the show. Back on the Diva, you have this incredibly intelligent thing because Grudek had shown up earlier and told the old man, "Why don't you use the age system to make the Diva better?" Now, you'd think that he would go a little bit further and make the GXs and everything else in the Genoases better, but hey, at least they're thinking about it for the ship. And as the old man is pulling some information out from the age system, it's going to be a question of whether they're on time or not. But with 2 weeks while they're in the forest, they're able to get some help from Mr. Madonna, who pulls off his best Mula Flaga, and Emily and DK are going to see that the Diva's not going to transform, though they do tease at it, but instead it's going to be getting a super mega particle blaster super whatchamacallit cannon. As the crew disembark and head through the forest on their way to Unicorn Mansion, you're going to see a nice setup of contrasting space and the Earth colonies. This is an Earth-like colony, very similar to the old Earth, they say, and so that's sort of good to see the people that were born and bred in space marveling at the wonder, and then Flit is going to step on a branch and you'd swear he really has to go to the bathroom as he runs off after feeling something mysterious and new typey. And as Captain Grudek meets the reincarnated Don Voyage, or his old friend who also happens to be Tifa's stepfather, we're going to see Flit and Tifa actually have a moment in the woods where they talk. They both find out that, of course, they lost their parents to the Yui attacks, which is going to create a very Macrossy type love triangle for Flit to resolve, and I really do wonder who the mother is going to be for the second generation. By the way, she's playing Yuden right now, and yes, the Nobel Gundam is playing all the female characters in this. And heading into the break, we're going to be introduced to the villain of the piece, as spying on the Diva in the spaceport is going to be Narky McNarkerton, who is going to be proving that he's evil because he wants to A, arrest Grudek, and B, because he eats too much chocolate. And heading into the commercial, don't forget that whether you're watching this on YouTube or on gundamreviews.net, that you can see reviews of all of these mobile suits and a whole lot more. Flit finds his way in from playing in the woods, and then he's going to have a chance to be greeted by Mr. Burmings, who's going to be quite impressed that such a young guy was able to bring such stubborn sides together in the previous battles there on Fardane. But he's also going to warn him with a Yoda speech about fear leading to anger, etc., etc. And at this point, Flit is going to talk about how Tifa is going to be needing a family, despite the fact that the old man is trying. And there you sort of get a nice moment as Grudek realizes just how important the lack of family has been for all of these people that we've seen in the show so far, including Tifa. And then it's straight to Team America, because what else are you going to need for 2 weeks when you're lost in the woods planning a massive assault on an unknown enemy? You're gonna need a montage. With all of this just being interspersed with Flit and Tifa getting awfully close and Wolf just laying around like a lazy bum. Plot-wise, I think the most important thing is that they're actually going to be adding some military strength in the form of, who knows, well, they're not really important, but hopefully they provide some Genoases and ships for the assault. because the Diva with its three MSs is just not going to cut it. And at the end of the montage, even though there's not very much of Wolf and Malaise, there's plenty of Flit and Tifa, and the lasting image is going to be Grudek smiling that his plan is all coming together. And as Flit and Tifa say their goodbyes and promising to meet yet again, and then finally it's on to why we all watch Gundam in the first place. Yes, slow boat on slow boat action, as their pontoon boat is going to come out and run into Mr. Chocolate Bar and his goons, who is going to arrest Grudek with very little fight whatsoever. Grudek just sort of shrugs, as does the Diva crew, and he says, well, I suppose it's all over now that I'm being arrested by this dude. I suppose it does help that this dude has two Genuises painted up in blue, which is going to be a first for the series, to back him up though. And despite their pitiful lack of a fight earlier, as Wolf continues to laze around in the boat, here we're going to see who the real leader is of this side. Flit is going to take charge. He's going to think of Tifa, it's worth noting, not Emily, and he's going to say, yes, we have to get Grudek back. Fetch me my Gundam reins, snaps his fingers, and off they go. And then it's time for the only action of the episode, as Flit is going to bring out the normal, which is somewhat surprising. You'd consider that speed might be useful in this kind of case. But it is still pretty cool to see the normal. It's been a while. It breaks out its beam saber, no beam rifle needed, chops off some legs, sends one guy into the drink, and then he chops off the arms of a somewhat pro, as Mr. Chocolate Bar in his pontoon boat is going to be looking on in horror, seeing his blue Genuises fall to their death, just as Wolf shows up in the other pontoon boat and says, hey, we'll be taking our captain back, thank you very much. With Grudek back safely, they all realize that the die is cast and that every one of them is now a traitor, and that's going to cause a bit of a problem for the military personnel. But in the end, they've decided that the UE is the true enemy and the Federation be damned. But as the episode ends, Mr. Backtoe with his chocolate bar is going to take a big chomp of it as he gets out another cell phone, calls in for support and says, hey, we've got the Diva right where we want it anyway. We're gonna fight them in space as they leave port. And you have to wonder, is Grudek smiling and did he let him keep that cell phone as part of his Batman gambit? And the final scene is going to take us back to the Diva, where it's amazing what 2 weeks can do when you're Mr. Madonna and you've got the power of a montage and some still photos. Even though none were shown, he was able to get the Hyper Mega Super Whatchamacallit ready, which means they're actually ready to go take a shot at the big ship, as DK points out, and Emily is going to turn reflectively and say, it all begins from here. So for my thoughts on the episode as a whole, I think this is going to be a love it or hate it for a lot of fans. For me, I thought it was fantastic. Very little action, but instead we're getting some of the character development and plot development that we just haven't had over the previous 10 episodes. Grudek continues to be Grudek and just stealing the show all over the place. Wolf comes across as an actual human being, and Flit is really starting to take charge, and it sort of reminds me of Setsuna. At the beginning, he was following Lock-On before starting to assert himself, and here we see Flit, the real leader, and actually being the one who's going to drive the whole attack against the UE. It's also good to see that he's going to be finding a soulmate of some sorts in the form of Tifa or Yunin, and yes, of course, I use her silly name just because the pronunciation of the other one is a little bit unfortunate. But it's good to see the two of them set this up. I really am curious going in. I don't have any spoilers yet as to who the mother of the second generation hero is going to be. You can imagine that we've already seen in the promo art an older JoJo style Joseph Joestar Flit looking all cool. Can't wait to see the result of what's going to happen with Wolf and Malaise. What's going to happen to Grudek? Is he still going to kick around or is he going to bite it? In the end, because we truly are getting to the end. With January coming, the high-grade Age 2 is on its way, and it's always the models that tell the story. With it on its way, you can expect to say goodbye to all these familiar MSs, and the characters will see which ones are going to survive and move on. We got to see the introduction of a somewhat comical villain in the form of Mr. Chocolate Bar here, but I do have to wonder if when he was talking to Grudek, they talked about how Grudek knows the UE's true form and he showed interest in that. He's going to be leading out a whole bunch of ships, and outside of the fact that they added those suits from the montage and the woman with the purple hair, you really don't think that they're going to have anywhere near the strength that's necessary, especially if the Diva's crew is going, or MSs are going to be hanging back, playing defense. You can't see that happening, but you just got to wonder if this guy's going to turn out and have the Federation realize the righteousness of what they're doing and actually lend a hand, which is just going to set up all sorts of possibilities leading up to the final climax. So is it already too late to start to be getting nostalgic for the first generation? Good to see some mobile suits. I guess MS of the week is going to be the Blue Genoas. I would buy one if it came out. It's probably not going to come out. I'd still like to see those Zaku's and everything that we saw Racked fighting in the previous episodes along with Don Boyage. But what did you think of this episode? Too slow for you? Too much action? I hardly think that. But anyway, what do you think heading into the next generation and the big climax for this one? Anyway, everybody, Robert184, gundam.tk, thanks for watching. See you next week with my anime reviews. And don't forget to check out all the model reviews in between. See ya. Well, 00 had blue Earth Federation grunt suits, so I suppose stranger things have happened.